Hello and welcome to another EI Dynamics training series. Today we're going to be talking about how to create a job that generates a CSV, XML, or other type of text file generally used for importing data into other systems. And at the end of this training session, you will be able to create a job that will generate some type of importable file and email it off as an attachment. The scenario today is ABC company wants to extract a list of their vendors to be sent to their AP payment processor, such as AvidXchange or Esker. The requirements for this training session, we assume that you've already gone through and listened to the EI Dynamic Alert training videos. So the basic workflow of today's training is we're going to have two separate EI Dynamics jobs. One job to create the file and one job to email the file. Generally, we want to try and have as few jobs as possible. Ideally, if we could do it all in one, we would. But today, because of the nature of how the data is processed and the fact that we're going to email it, it's going to require that we have two separate jobs. So the first job that we're going to create is the email job. And the reason we're going to create this first is so that when we go and set up the job to generate the text file, that job's going to kick this job off. So we need to have this job built first so that we can reference it. It's a very simple job. We've got an email. So we go to the email tab and we set up our basic, who we're going to send the email to. A basic subject line that's probably going to be static on this, the same subject line all the time, so we don't need any merge parameters or anything there. And then on the report tab, we're simply going to reference a static file. Now, possibly in a production environment or in a real life situation, the output file that we create might, change dynamically, every time we email it. And in that case, we might, need to put some type of a, merge parameter, in here and in here, so that instead of having a static file name, we, have a mergeable dynamic name that we can pass in at runtime. But for our example in training today, we're assuming it's just the same file name all the time. And so we have this basic job to email off the file. The next step is we're going to create, which is the bulk of what we're going to do today, we're going to create the job that generates the CSV file. So, it's always good to put a description, just a, basic fundamental thing. Always good to put a job into test mode. We don't want to accidentally start emailing off CSV files to our bank or processor before we're, fully ready to do so, and we've tested everything that we've done. So it's always a good idea to put the job into test mode. So we go to the distribution logic tab, and this is where we're going to create a query that returns a list of vendors from our database. And as you can see here, we've got our query, our SQL query, and when we preview it, we see the list of vendors showing up. Now at runtime, when this job processes, as you learned in some of the other training sessions, EI Dynamics is going to iterate through this list of records, and it's going to take some action. So in this particular job, we're going to iterate through all of our records, and we're going to append them in some form or fashion into a text file, which ultimately will become our final file that we're going to email off to the third party. So we then go to the Events and Actions tab, and we click on the Process Events and Action button. And we go to the pre-processed job event. You can see that the event type is write text to file. And in the body here, we've got our header record. So pre-processed job, what does that mean? It means that before we iterate through and go through all of those distribution records, we're going to take this action. And the action is we're going to create a text file, and we're going to insert into that text file this row of header information, which was required by the import format that we were provided by the third party. Down here, we have the name and path of the file that we're going to create. And as I said, maybe in a real world situation, this might be a dynamic merge. We might put a merge parameter in here to dynamically create what this file is going to be. But for our training session today, we're assuming that the file is always going to be the same name. It's going to be saved in the same location. Another important aspect on this tab is the append function, or the append parameter, and it's false. So what this parameter is asking is, if I create this file and it already exists, do I want to append the results to the file? In this case, we're saying false, because this is the beginning and we're creating a brand new file every time. So by saying false, it's not going to append, it's going to overwrite and create a brand new file. So the pre-processed job initiates, we create a new file, we append a row of information up here, which is listed in our command text box. And then now the job goes to the second step of querying our database for a list of vendors and then iterating through all of those records. And so that's where we now have the post-process transaction events. What that means is, after we get our list of distribution records for each transaction / record, it's going to go through one record at a time, and it's going to take this action. And the action is going to be write text to file. We have all of the merge parameters here, as you can see. So each one of these relates back to a field in that list of records that we returned from the database. Down here, again, we're re-referencing that same file, and this time the append is true. So now that we've already created the file, we're going to now, all subsequent records are going to be appended into that existing file. So now we move to the final tab. So now that we've created our file, appended all our records to the file has been created and exists, we're now going to email the file off to the intended recipient. And so on this tab, the event type is an EI Dynamics job. And this is where we now are going to reference that first job that we created, which was our email job. And it's going to kick that job off. And if the file's created, it's going to find it. It's going to create the email. It's going to attach it. And it's going to send it off to whoever we told it to send it to. So that is pretty much the fundamentals of creating a job that generates a text file. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let's go now, and I'm going to actually show you this job run. So if I'm here in my live environment, I've got my two jobs. Let's go to the first one. This is the one that creates our text file, and it'll kick the second one off. I'm going to hit process just to see how this goes. And you saw how quickly it just processed over 3,500 records. If I come out here, I now have a file here called vendor.csv. If I open this in Notepad, you can see the output that it created, which mimics the rules that we put into our job when we set it up. So that's it. It's pretty straightforward, very quick, much faster than you probably would imagine and what you might spend using other techniques to create some type of an extractable file out of your database system. In any event, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it, and hopefully you'll come back and see and watch other training videos for EI Dynamics. Thank you.